Liz, what are you doing? That's where it's so very audio this time. Had a good video with you last time, but I didn't have my hands, so it's kind of echoey. Should we do something to try to keep this door open without, when people are trying to come in? You want to be our door person? Okay.
I mean, I could.
Not sure where the Velcro's at.
Open, but it'll be noisy.
Right.
Jackhammer.
So I'm wondering.
Oh, wow. There you go.
I don't know, I was looking for it a minute ago.
That's a good way to start the day. Yeah, thanks. No.
Any help with anything? Readers are working. What do you think?
Looks great. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Really nice.
Really good.
Yeah. You guys like the paint?
Yeah, looks really.
That's pretty good, huh?
Yeah, good.
The art, I'm getting the art in the next 2 weeks, so you'll start seeing stuff put up. That's my personal stuff, but I'm not gonna put that up, but it's gonna be pretty cool art.
Don't know where it disappeared to. A couple things that ended up missing.
I think I have a ratchet strap in my car.
Kind of cut up with the first one and answer the question last time and that one started with the second one. But the second chapter started with
These winds are scary, like the fact that we're having more.
We got online here. Yeah. All right. Welcome, Stephen. We got Stephen online. You guys ready to go?
Yes.
Let's get going here.
Oh, you just-
All right. How's everybody doing this morning?
Good,
That's good. Awesome. We got Stephen, we got Jen O'Neill. Welcome. Okay. Good morning.
Sure.
So, this isn't a test or anything, but just raise a hand. Who got to read the whole chapter beforehand? No big deal if you didn't. Got to read some of it? Okay. So we'll read this chapter together if you guys are good with that. And then we'll go through the questions together. So, I'm telling you, every time you read it, something different pops up, even as I was listening to it this morning, depending on where you're going through. So what we'll do is we'll play it off the Audible, follow it along. Does everybody have the book with them? Okay. And I'm going to try to turn it up so you guys can hear it on here. So we're going through chapter 2, Desire. Actually, it's not intro. So chapter 1, Desire? Chapter 2. Yep. So Desire's the chapter here. We're going to play it on Audible so you can hear it and follow it along with your book. And then we'll go over the questions at the end of the book. Okay. Or at the end of the chapter. So we're going to start it right now. Unless somebody really wants to read. Somebody eager to read right now? April?
I mean, I can read.
You can do it. All right. We'll
Yeah.
we'll try it with Audible. We'll follow along with it. And then we'll go through there. At certain points, I'll stop it and just write some key concepts up and we can talk about it too as we go through it. But it's going to take about 20, 30 minutes to get through the whole chapter. Okay. All right. So let's get started.
The first step toward riches.
Can you hear it online? Okay. Just text
When
or
Edward
message if you can hear.
Stevens climbed down from the freight train in Orange, New Jersey more than 30 years ago, he may have resembled a tramp, but his thoughts were those of a king. As he made his way from the railroad tracks to Thomas A. Edison's office.
Okay, so the big thing with this book is it gets the ideas going. So if you have your journal, write as things come to you, write them down. Key concepts. It's like you're trying to study the principles of success. They're going to talk about a lot of the same key terms and words, and you want to understand. Desire is obviously one of them, right? Especially for this chapter. But you're going to hear a lot of similar secrets that kind of go through the book. Okay?
Was at work. He saw himself standing in Edison's presence. He heard himself asking Mr. Edison for an opportunity to carry out the one consuming obsession of his life, a burning desire to become the business associate of the great inventor. Barnes's desire was not a hope. It was not a wish. It was a keen, pulsating desire, which transcended everything else. It was definite. The desire was not new when he approached Edison. It had been Barnes's dominating desire for a long time. In the beginning, when the desire first appeared in his mind, it may have been, probably was, only a wish, but it was no mere wish when he appeared before Edison with it. A few years later, Edwin C. Barnes again stood before Edison, in the same office where he first met the inventor. This time, his desire had been translated into reality. He was in business with Edison. The dominating dream of his life had become a reality. Today, people who know Barnes envy him because of the break life yielded him. They see him in the days of his triumph without taking the trouble to investigate the cause of his success. Barnes succeeded because he chose a definite goal, placed all his energy, all his willpower, all his effort, everything back of that goal. He did not become the partner of Edison the day he arrived. He was content to start in the most menial work, as long as it provided an opportunity to take even one step toward his cherished goal.
So just anybody want to share what they're picking up from that first couple paragraphs? Because there's a lot of key things that they're talking about right there. You guys all just taking rapid notes? Rapid notes. What do you see, Liz, from what you're writing down right there? What's kind of jumping out at you at the page?
I have to translate it into reality. You
Uh-huh.
have to choose that definite goal
Uh-huh.
to kind of, put it all in, all your energy, all your willpower.
Yep.
That's
to
what I wrote.
succeed
That's
your dream, your goal.
it is going all in, and that's it right there. So it's being clear about what you want, right? That definite, either that definite purpose or that goal, that definite goal, but it's got to be definite. And what's the difference between a wish and this desire? What's the difference? And they're trying to get you to differentiate. That's one of the big things they teach you in law school, is being able to compare and contrast, so to speak, right? So you have two things and you're able to differentiate why house A isn't as good as house B, or vice versa. Why house A is better than house B. Whether you're on a listing presentation or with buyers, it's the same thing, but you got to be able to differentiate. So what's the difference between a wish and a desire? What's that?
A wish is just something you want, and a desire is something that you're willing to work for to achieve it.
You take an action. So steps, actual steps that you're taking towards it does change it, right? How do you change a wish? So wish could just be a thought that just kind of went into your mind, and it's like, oh, that'd be kind of nice. I'd like a burger right now, right? But how does that become a desire? Commercial after commercial after commercial, right? If you're seeing it, I'm serious. You watch it, it's late at night, and that commercial pops up. Now all of a sudden you want to run to Taco Bell because you saw, right?
Crave Box.
It is. You saw the Crave Box commercial
Yeah.
pops up.
Just don't lose that vision. You stay focused on that wish, but when you focus on it and, don't take your side out of it, is where you accomplish that dream.
So there's a way to feed that wish and to turn it into a pulsating desire. That's what I'm trying to get to right now. So that's the difference. So he talks about a pulsating desire. Like, what do you think? What makes it sound like that pulsating desire? Does that make sense? Like, when does your heart sputter a little bit? Because you want it so bad. You get what I'm saying? Does that make sense? You have to get to that where that heart skips a beat. It's that pulsating desire. It's like, no, I want that, whatever it is. You get what I'm saying? Whatever you're thinking of. Hopefully you guys are all keeping this PG, right? But whatever it is, I'm saying it's the same thing. And we'll get to that in chapter 12, right? It's coming up. So you're going to see why, when I'm talking about pulsating desire, why he uses those specific words. Okay. It's all, that's the way God made us, right? And it's to use that energy to accomplish what we're trying to do. So it's all these words are important and it's going to trigger certain things. So we want to try to figure out how do we create a mere wish or even a dream to an actual desire that's a burning desire that will stop at no until you get what you're looking for, right? And we want to figure out how to do that with everything it is that we do.
5 years passed before the chance he had been seeking made its appearance. During all those years, not one ray of hope, not one promise of attainment of his desire had been held out to him. To everyone except himself, he appeared only another cog in the Edison business wheel. But in his own mind, he was the partner of Edison every minute of the time, from the very day that he first went to work there. It is a remarkable illustration of the power of a definite desire. Barnes won his goal because he wanted to be a business associate of Mr. Edison, more than he wanted anything else. He created a plan by which to attain that purpose. But he burned all bridges behind him. He stood by his desire until it became the dominating obsession of his life, and finally, a fact. When he went to Orange, he did not say to himself, I will try to induce Edison to give me a job of some sort. He said, I will see Edison and put him on notice that I have come to go into business with him. He did not say, I will work there for a few months, and if I get no encouragement, I will quit and get a job somewhere else. He did say, I will start anywhere. I will do anything Edison tells me to do, but before I am through, I will be his associate. He did not say, I will keep my eyes open for another opportunity, in case I fail to get what I want in the Edison organization. He said, there is but one thing in this world that I am determined to have, and that is a business association with Thomas A. Edison. I will burn all bridges behind me and stake my entire future on my ability to get what I want. He left himself no possible way of retreat. He had to win or perish. That is all there is to the Barnes story of success. A long while ago, a great warrior faced a situation which made it necessary for him to make a decision which ensured his success on the battlefield. He was about to send his armies against a powerful foe whose men outnumbered his own. He loaded his soldiers into boats, sailed to the enemy's country, unloaded soldiers and equipment, then gave the order to burn the ships that had carried them. Addressing his men before the first battle, he said, you see the boats going up in smoke. That means we cannot leave these shores alive unless we win. We now have no choice. We win or we perish. They won. Every person who wins in any undertaking must be willing to burn his ships and cut all sources of retreat. Only by so doing can one be sure of maintaining that state of mind known as a burning desire to win, essential to success. The morning after the Great Chicago Fire, a group of merchants stood on State Street, looking at the smoking remains of what had been their stores. They went into a conference to decide if they would try to rebuild, or leave Chicago and start over in a more promising section of the country. They reached a decision, all except one, to leave Chicago. The merchant who decided to stay and rebuild pointed a finger at the remains of his store and said, gentlemen, on that very spot I will build the world's greatest store, no matter how many times it may burn down. That was more than 50 years ago. The store was built. It stands there today, a towering monument to the power of that state of mind known as a burning desire. The easy thing for Marshall Field to have done would have been exactly what his fellow merchants did. When the going was hard and the future looked dismal, they pulled up and went where the going seemed easier. Mark well this difference between Marshall Field and the other merchants, because it is the same difference which distinguishes Edwin C. Barnes from thousands of other young men who have worked in the Edison organization. It is the same difference which distinguishes practically all who succeed from those who fail. Every human being who reaches the age of understanding of the purpose of money wishes for it. Wishing will not bring riches. but desiring riches with a state of mind that becomes an obsession, then planning definite ways and means to acquire riches, and backing those plans with persistence, which does not will bring riches. The method by which desire for riches can be transmuted into its financial equivalent consists of 6 definite practical steps, viz. First, fix in your mind the exact amount of money you desire. It is not sufficient merely to say, I want plenty of money.
This is how you come up with your statement of desire, okay? So these are the 6 steps here. And whether it's money or any goal, you can use these same steps to accomplish any goal that you want to accomplish. Or if you have a goal for your kid, right? I do this all the time. You want to be very clear, very definite. We're going to go through these 6 steps. These are the same things that Edison also did when he invented the light bulb and 10,000 other inventions. Same 6 steps.
Be definite as to the amount. There is a psychological reason for definiteness, which will be described in a subsequent chapter. Second, determine exactly what you intend to give in return for the money you desire.
So first step, definite amount, come up with the definite amount. Second step, and it's also not just the amount, but when you're going to accomplish it by. So you can say X amount of dollars in the bank by a specific date. And the second is what you plan to give up in order to get that. What habits are keeping you from accomplishing that goal you want to accomplish?
There is no such reality as something for nothing. Third, establish a definite date when you intend to possess the money you desire. Fourth, create a definite plan for carrying out your desire and begin at once, whether you are.
Four's definite plan. Just create any plan. Don't worry about it being a perfect plan. Just think of what you think are the first steps necessary to do it. The plan changes as you start taking action. And that's okay. And the ideas will start coming to you. But when you read this before you go to sleep, your brain starts working on it overnight. Sometimes you'll wake up in the middle of the night. You got to have a journal or something by you because God is giving you the answer for you to write it down. Your subconscious is working and the ideas are coming to you. And you never know what's going to come. But when you're obsessed over it, it's that desire. First thing when you wake up in the morning, right before you go to sleep, these answers start coming to you. You're going to start paying attention to it more and taking action.
You are not to put this plan into action. Fifth, write out a clear, concise statement of the amount of money you intend to acquire. Name the time limit for its acquisition. State what you intend to give in return for the money, and describe clearly the plan through which you intend to accumulate it. Sixth, read your written statement aloud, twice daily, once just before retiring at night, and once after arising in the morning. As you read, see and feel and believe yourself already in possession of the money. It is important that you follow the instructions described in these 6 steps. It is especially important that you observe and follow the instructions in the 6th paragraph. You may complain that it is impossible for you to see yourself in possession of the money before you actually have it. Here is where a burning desire will come to your aid. If you truly desire money so keenly that your desire is an obsession, you will have no difficulty in convincing yourself that you will acquire it. The object is to want money and to become so determined to have it that you convince yourself you will have it. Only those who become money conscious ever accumulate great riches. Money consciousness means that the mind has become so thoroughly saturated with the desire for money that one can see oneself already in possession of it. To the uninitiated, who has not been schooled in the working principles of the human mind, these instructions may appear impractical. It may be helpful to all who fail to recognize the soundness of the 6 steps to know that the information they convey was received from Andrew Carnegie, who began as an ordinary laborer in the steel mills, but managed, despite his humble beginning, to make these principles yield him a fortune of considerably more than $100 million. It may be of further help to know that the 6 steps here recommended were carefully scrutinized by the late Thomas A. Edison, who placed his stamp of approval upon them as being not only the steps essential for the accumulation of money, but necessary for the attainment of any definite goal. The steps call for no hard labor. They call for no sacrifice. They do not require one to become ridiculous or credulous. To apply them calls for no great amount of education. But the successful application of these 6 steps does call for sufficient imagination to enable one to see and to understand that accumulation of money cannot be left to chance, good fortune, and luck. One must realize that all who have accumulated great fortunes first did a certain amount of dreaming, hoping, wishing, desiring, and planning before they acquired money. You may as well know right here that you can never have riches in great quantities unless you can work yourself into a white heat of desire for money and actually believe you will possess it. You may as
Everybody get this concept? It makes sense. Does it seem weird or does it seem wrong or, I mean, who's lived that? And Ken, I know you have, right?
Yeah.
You've done it. Do you mind sharing just a little bit?
I mean, I've always had like the green light, red light effect to money.
Okay.
So,
What do you mean by that?
well, like, for example, right now I'm in a green light mode.
Okay.
I'm buying a house.
Yep.
But I know that I have to accumulate money to buy this house.
Right.
So I'm spending a certain amount, then I'll put a red light on it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have 3 escrows that I have to close in 6 months.
Yep.
I know I have to do that
Yep.
to green light the rest of the deal.
Right.
So I'm
So you-
preparing myself mentally
Yeah.
to be closing 3 houses in 6 months.
You already know you're gonna do it.
I have to do it.
There's no other option.
There's no other, or I lose the house.
Yep. And you've done that before,
Done it for my whole life.
right? Multiple times. So you know when you have that absolute definiteness, you're not gonna miss an opportunity or something that you want really bad. Just be or hope for it. You hope it works out.
Right.
You know it's gonna work
No,
out
no.
already. You
So,
have to
like,
prepare
sure,
yourself mentally.
Like before that even came up, we were talking about knocking 100 doors tomorrow.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
I need to be in escrow.
Right.
And I know I'm a door knocker.
Yep.
Most people aren't door knockers.
Yeah.
But I'm a door knocker. I meet people very easily through door knocking. So, I mean, we met about 10 people just going up 2 blocks.
Well, and first of all, congratulations. I did get your voicemail. I listened to it yesterday. You got your offer accepted.
I got my offer accepted.
And you
7 offers on the property.
wrote
and
7.
one.
But-
So,
But you're embodying all the principles that are being talked about in here. And you're not taking any no's. You're taking your lumps, you're just going and learning and figuring it out.
my friend taught me the word no means KNOW. So he hears no, and he's just gonna know that there's a way to work around the no.
That's beautiful.
So
I love
when
it.
he hears the word no, it's KNOW.
Yep. Awesome job. Just wanted to give you props on that.
Thanks.
Congrats on getting your offer accepted. So,
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm like giddy.
yeah. Good. Well, keep it up. Anything, Sean,
By
were
the
you
way,
gonna say
I'm
something?
taking a room, so if anyone knows anybody who's looking
Uh-huh.
for people, I am to do this.
Yeah.
I want to keep my payments really low, so I don't have to feel the pressure.
Yeah,
So
well,
if any of you know of anyone looking for rentals,
perfect.
it's a 4-bedroom, 2-bath house. It's gonna be super contemporary, really cute,
Great.
really nice house.
Awesome. Were you gonna share something, Gobi or Sean? You good? You sure? How are you processing this? I'm just curious, what are your thoughts? When you're reading through this chapter and they're giving you these steps, they're talking about just like, cannot be left to chance, good fortune and luck. What does that mean to you?
I mean, it's not just gonna come and you don't believe that it will, and you can be it, in the future for yourself, so
Right.
you can't just hope.
But there's a lot of people that just say people are lucky.
Yeah.
Right? And they kind of discount it. Ken, I know you got work going on right now. Are you listening to what we're doing right now? Are you busy?
I'm not.
You're good. Okay, you're good. All right. Jen, anything you want to share just from what you're hearing right now on this part? What are your thoughts?
I've always kind of just believed that things would happen and saw myself with the things that I accomplished. I kind of had always told myself like, I will have this, I will do this. And when people say like, how, oftentimes I would just say, I don't know how, but I've always had that mentality as well, kind of similar, just like, no, I will do this. And it seems to be, so far, it seems like it's worked, just kind of seeing myself having them. I don't always know. I mean, even right now.
Right.
I know I'm in the process of building a house in Costa Rica and
Right.
people say, well, how are you doing this? I'm like, I don't know, but my plans are approved now. I'm like,
Yeah.
I own my land. I'm like, so much-
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's
I'm like, I
huge.
still don't know the final, and people say, well, when? I go, well, probably within 6 months, but it's gonna happen this year, don't know exactly how, but.
Yeah.
Where
I
in
do
Costa
believe-
Rica?
It's about 20 minutes north of Tamarindo.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, it's one of
Thank
my
you.
favorite places.
Thank you.
That's super
So
exciting.
yes, I do believe that when you set a goal in your mind and tell yourself there's no other option, I do believe that you do make it happen.
Yeah.
Someone taught me something, if you write it down and you have like, everyone always, and even I used to question why business plan, because let's say you're saying, okay, I'm gonna sell one deal a month, right? And you put that on. There's something about writing down goals and setting it, it's like a clear line to get to one place to the next place. And by writing things down, by having those, and then the minutia of the daily, how do you get to one escrow a month? How many people do you have to call? How many doors do you have to knock?
Mhm.
And knowing your numbers. So, I mean, when I used to do business coaching, I don't do it anymore. And it was a lot because the math was making me a little bit nuts. But I used to know my numbers, and it would take me about 25 contacts to get to an escrow when I was at the height of my game.
That's great.
For a new person, it takes about 300 to 400 contacts to
Right.
get to an escrow.
Very true.
So when you keep these numbers in mind, okay, so 300, 400 contacts, and then you divide that, let's say I do 30 a day. You know that if you're contacting 30 new people a day, you're gonna get to that escrow.
Yep.
It kind of simplifies it.
It does. But it can do, like you said, it can be too much sometimes as well. So it's finding what works for you. Doesn't mean go through everything blind. Just means figure out what'll get you to your results that you're looking for. And are your activities tied to what your actual goals are? Are you doing the things that are getting you a step closer? So if you don't track it, you don't know, but there is an actual science to it. And more importantly, what you said is writing it down. So Laura Lee Anthony was the very first person who had me write my goals down. She's all write your 5 goals down, or any goals, right?
Right.
5's an easy number. But every morning, every day, and that's what we should start with here. I just kind of jumped into it because I really wanted to get into this chapter where we actually go through it. We're not going to do it every week, but especially early on, this chapter, this concept right here that they're teaching, Ken knows, and he saw the transformation with me. It happened, and I told him, I said, bro, I already know this is what I'm going to do by the end of the year. And it was within a couple months, and all of a sudden, escrow, 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 escrow. Four right before the week before Christmas. Nobody's working. And I'm not bragging. I'm telling you, this works. I changed my state of mind first. That was the first thing. If I'm looking at, well, it's November, it's December, there's no listings out there. Interest rates are high. All the other noise that a lot of people have bought into, I wouldn't have taken the action that I took. Instead, as Will called me up, he's like, we had to get the dog out in you again, right? I don't know what that is exactly, but it came out, right? It was that knowing I'm not going to let my family down, knowing I have to do that. There is no other option. I've made my decision. Now we got to go all in, right? And that's what every single person in here has done the same thing. So the difference is being aware that when you create this type of state of mind and you truly believe it, and you take all action and do everything in alignment with it, that it will come to fruition. That's the only difference. And if it's not happening, it's because we're not there yet, and we got to figure out how to get there, right? And there could be some skills we need to work on, or some people that we need to bring closer to us, because our skills don't necessarily have to be there yet. As she talked about 300 versus 25. But if you have somebody who is able to convert at a higher level and see things and can jump on opportunities, and you're working with them, I guarantee you're going to see success a lot quicker. We've seen it. We've done it time and time again. But the key is, what is your desire? What's your state of mind? Are you coachable? Are you willing to put in the work, right? So it's just, these are key things. I don't try to turn it into a real estate training, but this is all, we also have to connect the dots of how this is gonna help us live the life we're all capable of living this year. Okay, anything you wanna share? Any thoughts?
No, this to me is a lot like manifestation.
Yeah.
You know, you have to have the desire to manifest it and then to go through with it and write it down so you can
Right.
see it. So
Right.
it can come to fruition.
Absolutely. Cool. Yes.
And real quick, I just want to piggyback on what Brandon was saying about himself, like, what do you plan to give up to accomplish those goals?
Mm-hmm.
I came in for a long day, and Brandon's here for the Christmas party. I was a week early. Brandon was here at 8 at night working rather than being with his family, and it's like he was willing to give that up, that time with his family to support his family, and it's just like you have to be willing to give up certain things.
I appreciate that. No, thank you for doing it. Well, we don't have this cool office for nothing. Somebody's got to be in here, right? And if you're in here, you should be working, so but thank you. No, it's something that just happens. It almost seems like magic, but it all starts up here, and it all starts with that belief and understanding, and you will have enough. And I believe God will give you enough, but you got to put in the work, and you got to do good, and you got to get in alignment, and you got to keep your focus in the right areas. You're not here taking from somebody just to try to provide for your family. It's the complete opposite. You're sacrificing and you're killing deals sometimes and doing things because it's in their best interest, even though it's not in our best interest, but in the long term, you'll always have enough. God's always going to give you enough, and it's, again, I'm not trying to preach. I'm telling you what I believe, but this helps me with the state of mind that helps me get to where I need to get to. Right. And always know that I, through God, have the ability to accomplish what's capable out there. Okay. All right. I'm gonna keep going but when this starts going, this is what we want, right? We're all getting in tune on the same wavelength here. So it's good stuff. That's why we're here this week. All right.
Also, that every great leader from the dawn of civilization down to the present was a dreamer. Christianity is the greatest potential power in the world today, because its founder was an intense dreamer who had the vision and the imagination to see realities in their mental and spiritual form before they had been transmuted into physical form. If you do not see great riches in your imagination, you will never see them in your bank balance. Never in the history of America has there been so great an opportunity for practical dreamers as now exists. The 6-year economic collapse has reduced all men substantially to the same level. A new race is about to be run. The stakes represent huge fortunes which will be accumulated within the next 10 years. The rules of the race have changed because we now live in a changed world that definitely favors the masses, those who had but little or no opportunity to win under the conditions existing during the Depression, when fear paralyzed growth and development. We who are in this race for riches should be encouraged to know that this changed world in which we live is demanding new ideas, new ways of doing things, new leaders, new inventions, new methods of teaching, new methods of marketing, new books, new literature, new features for the radio, new ideas for moving pictures. Back of all this demand for new and better things, there is one quality which one must possess to win, and that is definiteness of purpose, the knowledge of what one wants, and a burning desire to possess it. The business depression marked the death of one age and the birth of another. This changed world requires practical dreamers who can and will put their dreams into action. The practical dreamers have always been, and always will be, the pattern makers of civilization. We who desire to accumulate riches should remember the real leaders of the world always have been men who harnessed and put into practical use the intangible, unseen forces of unborn opportunity, and have converted those forces, or impulses of thought, into skyscrapers, cities, factories, airplanes, automobiles, and every form of convenience that makes life more pleasant. Tolerance and an open mind are practical necessities of the dreamer of today. Those who are afraid of new ideas are doomed before they start. Never has there been a time more favorable to pioneers than the present. True, there is no wild and woolly West to be conquered, as in the days of the covered wagon. but there is a vast business, financial, and industrial world to be remolded and redirected along new and better lines. In planning to acquire your share of the riches, let no one influence you to scorn the dreamer. To win the big stakes in this changed world, you must catch the spirit of the great pioneers of the past, whose dreams have given to civilization all that it has of value, the spirit which serves as the lifeblood of our own country, your opportunity and mine, to develop and market our talents. Let us not forget, Columbus dreamed of an unknown world, staked his life on the existence of such a world, and discovered it. Copernicus, the great astronomer, dreamed of a multiplicity of worlds and revealed them. No one denounced him as impractical after he had triumphed. Instead, the world worshipped at his shrine, thus proving once more that success requires no apologies, failure permits no alibis. If the thing you wish to do is right, and you believe in it, go ahead and do it. Put your dream across, and never mind what they say if you meet with temporary defeat, for they perhaps do not know that every failure brings with it the seed of an equivalent success.
What does that mean right there? Well, why does he say temporary defeat? Why is that wording so important?
It's just a minor setback.
Uh-huh,
It's a bump in the road.
right?
And it's always a learning lesson, you know?
Absolutely. No, those are exactly it. But temporary defeat and failure, there's a lot of people that feel, I've heard it my whole life growing up. It's just like, oh yeah, good things don't ever happen to us in a certain way. Like we'll never get all this money. We'll never hit the lotto. We'll never do these things. But the important things are what matter. We have our family, and we're a loving family. And some people believe that if you have the money, then there's a price you have to pay with a good family, right? It's almost superstition. But they start planting these seeds into their kids, into their kids' kids, and it creates a fear to make money, right? So it changes how you work, changes how you operate, changes how you look things. Instead of looking at money as something that is another tool that can also do a lot of good if you do the right things with it. There's a saying that, what is it? Money is the root of all evil, right? We hear that quite a bit. Money is the root of all evil. What I've heard a better definition is lack of money is the root of all evil, right? Think of a lot of bad things that happen. And it's typically when you don't have money that creates, this nasty side that comes out. You get what I'm saying? So it's all perspective. It's all in terms of how you look at it. But temporary defeat, I know it's kind of going off on a tangent here, but temporary defeat just means it's temporary. It's a mindset. It's how you look at a negative thing happening. What's your perspective? And then what are you going to do from that? What'd you learn from it? Do you keep moving forward or do you stop? Because most people quit, right? Yes.
I always looked at that, from a previous job of mine, we weren't allowed to just like defeat or fail. We just replaced it with opportunity.
Uh-huh.
So like within this, instead of defeat, it was within this opportunity of learning. What could we have done differently? And lay out one or two different versions of what just happened.
That's awesome.
And then see the positive, because a lot of times people can go from seeing the positive and
Yep.
get stuck, and that temporary defeat becomes permanent or realization.
Absolutely.
So
That was beautiful. No, thank you. Anything else anybody wants to add? All right, just another key concept. Okay.
Henry Ford, poor and uneducated, dreamed of a horseless carriage, went to work with what tools he possessed, without waiting for opportunity to favor him, and now evidence of his dream belts the entire earth. He has put more wheels into operation than any man who ever lived, because he was not afraid to back his dreams. Thomas Edison dreamed of a lamp that could be operated by electricity, began where he stood to put his dream into action, and despite more than 10,000 failures, he stood by that dream until he made it a physical reality. Practical dreamers do not quit. Whalen dreamed of a chain of cigar stores, transformed his dream into action, and now the United Cigar Stores occupy the best corners in America. Lincoln dreamed of freedom for the black slaves, put his dream into action, and barely missed living to see a united North and South translate his dream into reality. The Wright brothers dreamed of a machine that would fly through the air. Now one may see evidence all over the world that they dreamed soundly. Marconi dreamed of a system for harnessing the intangible forces of the ether. Evidence that he did not dream in vain may be found in every wireless and radio in the world. Moreover, Marconi's dream brought the humblest cabin and the most stately manor house side by side. It made the people of every nation on earth backdoor neighbors. It gave the President of the United States a medium by which he may talk to all the people of America at one time and on short notice. It may interest you to know that Marconi's friends had him taken into custody and examined in a psychopathic hospital when he announced he had discovered a principle through which he could send messages through the air without the aid of wires or other direct physical means of communication. The dreamers of today fare better. The world has become accustomed to new discoveries. Nay, it has shown a willingness to reward the dreamer who gives the world a new idea. The greatest achievement was, at first, and for a time, but a dream. The oak sleeps in the acorn, the bird waits in the egg, and in the highest vision of the soul, a waking angel stirs. Dreams are the seedlings of reality. Awake, arise, and assert yourself, you dreamers of the world. Your star is now in the ascendancy. The world depression brought the opportunity you have been waiting for. It taught people humility, tolerance, and open-mindedness. The world is filled with an abundance of opportunity, which the dreamers of the past never knew. A burning desire to be and to do is the starting point from which the dreamer must take off. Dreams are not born of indifference, laziness, or lack of ambition. The world no longer scoffs at the dreamer, nor calls him impractical. If you think it does, take a trip to Tennessee and witness what a dreamer president has done in the way of harnessing and using the great water power of America. A score of years ago, such a dream would have seemed like madness. You have been disappointed. You have undergone defeat during the Depression. You have felt the great heart within you crush until it bled. Take courage, for these experiences have tempered the spiritual metal of which you are made. They are assets of incomparable value. Remember, too, that all who succeed in life get off to a bad start and pass through many heartbreaking struggles before they arrive. The turning point in the lives of those who succeed usually comes at the moment of some crisis, through which they are introduced to their other selves. John Bunyan wrote The Pilgrim's Progress.
Stop it there. So that's again, there's only a couple more key points in this chapter. That's one of them there. So I know I set it up a little bit, but did everybody pick up on what they talked about there? Or did anybody pick it up? So the key thing they talked about is it says, remember too, all who succeed in life get off to a bad start and pass through many heartbreaking struggles before they arrive. The turning point in the lives of those who succeed usually comes at the moment of some crisis, through which they are introduced to their other selves. Who has an idea what the other selves is supposed to refer to?
The empowers
Okay. And what do you mean more by that?
from a mindset view of like I can do mentality, or I see myself being like the guy at Farmers, the guy who saw himself being something other than just a worker, he saw himself as a partner.
Uh-huh.
So that was another self.
Right.
I guess for me, I would interpret it to be the person you're going to be at the end of the road. You're aspiring to be, you're working to be every day.
That's good. So the key concept of this is that you got to feel like you hit rock bottom, or you got to feel almost to that state of hopelessness where it's as bad as you think it could ever get. And it's a scary scene. The picture Napoleon Hill paints is he's coming home to his house, right? He comes home, he sees his kids looking out the window across the street. He has been studying and obsessed with the success principles and interviewing all the wealthiest people for 20 years. But Carnegie's not paying him anything. He's got to do his own stuff. He's basically got to be broke for those 20 years trying to figure out these principles that he's teaching us right now. As he goes home, he sees his kids looking out the window. They don't have a Christmas tree. They're watching the kids across the street put a Christmas tree up. He's pissed off. So he comes in and he sees it, and he goes upstairs and he starts typing and just typing and going nuts with what he's typing. That's the other self that came out. It's that feeling of what am I doing? What's going on? And it is this person that's unstoppable. But unless you go through these things, it is very difficult to accomplish anything of great proportion, right? Like you can't, if everything's good and everything's going well, and you got plenty of business, you got plenty of money flowing, you got all these things going, it is very difficult to ever discover that other self. There's no reason to. You're good. You're comfortable. Things are good. It's not until you feel everything. That's why it says a moment of great crisis. Something major has to happen, but you can either crawl into a hole and feel sorry for yourself, or you can figure it out and it comes out and you embrace it. So now instead of being afraid of these bad things happening, you're actually looking forward to them because you know that now you're going to dig deep. And now you're going to accomplish things that you wouldn't have ever accomplished unless you went through that. Does that make sense in terms of how you look at things? Most people don't look at it that way. So that's key. And I just really want, I'm hoping this starts kind of just changing a little bit of perspective of how we look at these situations. And then most importantly, what do we do after that, right? How do we take action? Ken, anything you want to add to that?
A lot of times, we put self-doubt in our head because we've been told or we follow the group, the norm of everyone else. And it's like, sometimes I'll hear from people and say, well, I'm just not educated enough. I'm not, you're more educated, or you have more skills, you have more experience, you went to school for that, you did this. People will make these excuses for things, but all these leaders that we're talking about had a limited education. The word educated, educo, is Latin for to pull out. It's not educate like you think. So pulling out
From within.
greatness from within can be all of you. And that's one thing you have to figure out. And the thing is, we all have these goals and these limitations of what we think we can accomplish. But the reality is, like my goals, if I talk about what I did, or if you talk about Tina, or you talk about Jen, or whatever, they seem like just so far-fetched because they're at a higher magnitude. But that's like her now norm. Her norm is this. Your norm is that. But are we really that much different? We can pull out and do all of this within us to be great. We have to overcome these barriers, and like for example, sacrificing. We talked about to sacrifice. When I was cranking it out, my wife, I would be with my kids loading up to go to a party, and I'd say, I gotta go to listing. And they'd be driving to Orange County, and I'll meet up with you later. I'd skip birthdays. My nickname was I gotta go. And I would literally, my phone would ring every 5 minutes, no exaggeration. Every 5 minutes, my phone would ring, and I had 4 appointments a day. So imagine the sacrifices of that. And I tell this story a million times over, but that year, I went to this award show and I saw a guy. I was 35th in the nation in sales. Just cranking. Guy next to me did double what I did, and the guy next to him did triple what he did. Okay. So imagine I'm giving everything. 8 in the morning to 8 at night, would go barely scrape some food in. Like I'm talking exhaustion. I can't imagine what this guy did, and I can't even imagine what that guy did. Triple. And then I'm sitting there watching the guy who did double in a 3-piece suit, and at the time he had pagers, and he's like, I was telling everybody, it was like Darth Vader, he just like couldn't even breathe. And he looked like he was gonna die. So the reason why I'm telling you this is along with these goals, once you get going, it becomes an addiction, and you become obsessed with it.
And you're gonna have to find balance within your family. You're gonna have to find balance. A good, successful person will be able to cater to everybody. So as much as we want to teach you to succeed and be cranking it out and do whatever, I know I'm going off on a different limb, but I'm like reliving my life when I hear this stuff. And that day when I won those awards, I went home and I grabbed my kid and I took him to the park because I didn't want to be that guy who's going to die like that. But where I was going with this whole thing is that we all have the ability to be great. We all have the ability to be great. There's no one that's smarter than you. It's about commitment and what you're gonna do. You're gonna have to make a commitment. You're gonna have to sacrifice. It's not gonna be easy. You're gonna have failures. And here's the problem. Everyone around you operates at a much slower pace because they've all tried and failed. And they'll start putting their disbeliefs on you. Like the guy Marconi, his friends wanted to have him committed. You know, people probably think we're nuts in what we do. You know, it's like, but we do it. So don't put these self-limitations on you. I know I went off on a crazy tangent on
That's
what we're
good.
trying to say, but you can do whatever. I look at myself, I had a very limited education. I didn't even finish college. You know, and I was director of marketing for 4 years, vice president of acquisition for Century 21. I didn't let myself believe that I was stupid, that I couldn't do it. I just filled in the need that needed to be filled because I knew I could outwork anybody. I knew I was smart enough to learn common sense, figure out what the problem is, figure out what the inefficiencies are, and go in there and attack it. And so, like Morgan was talking about numbers. Jesse didn't have any he didn't have anything on any of you guys, but he knocked 1,000 doors. 1,000 doors would give him a living. But who wants to knock on 1,000 doors? You have to make a choice. Figure out what it is. You don't have to knock on 1,000 doors. Maybe go do an open house. Commit to open house every single week. April, how was that? How was your last open house?
Excellent.
Would
There
you have
was
gotten
not-
that result if you're at home?
No,
No.
no.
Sean, I made you do that open house. What was the outcome of that?
That was really good. Handful, 10 groups came through and 3 or 4 prospects.
Do you think if you multiplied that commitment, that it would lead to your success?
Yes, definitely.
Why don't
Just by doing it.
why don't you do it? Yeah, and you want to keep saying that to yourself?
No, not at all.
So the fact that that was your answer right away, this is the problem. That's the problem. You've put in your head that whenever this is here, you can't overcome it because I'm lazy. You got to go over the help wall,
Yeah, for sure.
and that has to go away. That's the bottom line.
You guys are all here today. I mean, you took action. You could have stayed home, could have came up with $1 million. It's too windy. It's too this, it's too that, but you all came here to give this a try. And we're taking a chance with trying to read through the whole chapter together. I know it's slow. I know there's a lot, and we got 1 million things that are going on in our mind that we need to do right now. But I'm telling you, you commit. I mean, we're almost at an hour. We got 5 minutes. There's actually 5 more minutes left on the Audible. You commit to this an hour a week. I guarantee you're going to start seeing results. I promise every single one of you. And if it's not, then we got to figure out what's going on. You know what I mean? But just trust me with this. Give it, I appreciate you all being here. Let's finish it up. It says 4.5 minutes on the Audible. Okay.
Which is among the finest of all English literature, after he had been confined in prison and sorely punished because of his views on the subject of religion. O. Henry discovered the genius which slept within his brain after he had met with great misfortune and was confined in a prison cell in Columbus, Ohio. Being forced through misfortune to become acquainted with his other self and to use his imagination, he discovered himself to be a great author instead of a miserable criminal and outcast. Strange and varied are the ways of life, and stranger still are the ways of infinite intelligence, through which men are sometimes forced to undergo all sorts of punishment before discovering their own brains and their own capacity to create useful ideas through imagination. Edison, the world's greatest inventor and scientist, was a tramp telegraph operator. He failed innumerable times before he was driven finally to the discovery of the genius which slept within his brain. Charles Dickens began by pasting labels on blacking pots. The tragedy of his first love penetrated the depths of his soul and converted him into one of the world's truly great authors. That tragedy produced first David Copperfield, then a succession of other works that made this a richer and better world for all who read his books. Disappointment over love affairs generally has the effect of driving men to drink and women to ruin. And this because most people never learn the art of transmuting their strongest emotions into dreams of a constructive nature. Helen Keller became deaf, dumb, and blind shortly after birth. Despite her greatest misfortune, she has written her name indelibly in the pages of the history of the great. Her entire life has served as evidence that no one ever is defeated until defeat has been accepted as reality. Robert Burns was an illiterate country lad. He was cursed by poverty and grew up to be a drunkard in the bargain. The world was made better for his having lived because he clothed beautiful thoughts in poetry, and thereby plucked a thorn and planted a rose in its place. Booker T. Washington was born in slavery, handicapped by race and color. Because he was tolerant, had an open mind at all times on all subjects, and was a dreamer, he left his impress for good on an entire race. Beethoven was deaf, Milton was blind, but their names will last as long as time endures, because they dreamed and translated their dreams into organized thought. Before passing to the next chapter, kindle anew in your mind the fire of hope, faith, courage, and tolerance. If you have these states of mind and a working knowledge of the principles described, all else that you need will come to you when you are ready for it. Let Emerson state the thought in these words: every proverb, every book, every byword that belongs to thee for aid and comfort shall surely come home through open or winding passages. Every friend whom not thy fantastic will, but the great and tender soul in thee craveth, shall lock thee in his embrace. There is a difference between wishing for a thing and being ready to receive it. No one is ready for a thing until he believes he can acquire it. The state of mind must be belief, not mere hope or wish. Open-mindedness is essential for belief. Closed minds do not inspire faith, courage, and belief. Remember, no more effort is required to aim high in life, to demand abundance and prosperity, than is required to accept misery and poverty. A great poet has correctly stated this universal truth through these lines: I bargained with life for a penny, and life would pay no more. However, I begged at evening, when I counted my scanty store. For life is a just employer. He gives you what you ask. But once you accept the wages, why, you must bear the task. I worked for a menial's hire, only to learn dismayed that any wage I had asked of life, life would have willingly paid. Desire outwits Mother Nature. As a fitting climax to this chapter, I wish to introduce one of the most unusual persons I have ever known. I first saw him 24 years ago, a few minutes after he was born. He came into the world without any physical sign of ears, and the doctor admitted, when pressed for an opinion, that the child might be deaf and mute for life. I challenged the doctor's opinion. I had the right to do so. I was the child's father. I too reached a decision and rendered an opinion, but I expressed the opinion silently, in the secrecy of my own heart. I decided that my son would hear and speak. Nature could send me a child without ears, but nature could not induce me to accept the reality of the affliction. In my own mind, I knew that my son would hear and speak. How? I was sure there must be a way, and I knew I would find it. I thought of the words of the immortal Emerson: the whole course of things goes to teach us faith. We need only obey. There is guidance for each of us, and by lowly listening, we shall hear the right word. The right word? Desire. More than anything else, I desired that my son should not be a deaf mute. From that desire, I never receded, not for a second. Many years previously, I had written, our only limitations are those we set up in our own minds. For the first time, I wondered if that statement were true. Lying on the bed in front of me was a newly born child, without the natural equipment of hearing. Even though he might hear and speak, he was obviously disfigured for life. Surely this was a limitation which that child had not set up in his own mind. What could I do about it? Somehow I would find a way to transplant into that child's mind my own burning desire for ways and means of conveying sound to his brain without the aid of ears. As soon as the child was old enough to cooperate, I would fill his mind so completely with a burning desire to hear that nature would, by methods of her own, translate it into physical reality. All this thinking took place in my own mind. but I spoke of it to no one. Every day I renewed the pledge I had made myself, not to accept a deaf mute for a son. As he grew older and began to take notice of things around him, we observed that he had a slight degree of hearing. When he reached the age when children usually begin talking, he made no attempt to speak, but we could tell by his actions that he could hear certain sounds slightly. That was all I wanted to know. I was convinced that if he could hear even slightly, he might develop still greater hearing capacity. Then something happened which gave me hope. It came from an entirely unexpected source. We bought a Victrola. When the child heard the music for the first time, he went into ecstasies and promptly appropriated the machine. He soon showed a preference for certain records. Among them, It's a Long Way to Tipperary. On one occasion, he played that piece over and over for almost 2 hours, standing in front of the Victrola with his teeth clamped on the edge of the case. The significance of this self-formed habit of his did not become clear to us until years afterward, for we had never heard of the principle of bone conduction of sound at that time. Shortly after he appropriated the Victrola, I discovered that he could hear me quite clearly when I spoke with my lips touching his mastoid bone, or at the base of the brain. These discoveries placed in my possession the necessary media by which I began to translate into reality my burning desire to help my son develop hearing and speech. By that time, he was making stabs at speaking certain words. The outlook was far from encouraging, but desire backed by faith knows no such word as impossible. Having determined that he could hear the sound of my voice plainly, I began immediately to transfer to his mind the desire to hear and speak. I soon discovered that the child enjoyed bedtime stories, so I went to work, creating stories designed to develop in him self-reliance, imagination, and a keen desire to hear and to be normal. There was one story in particular, which I emphasized by giving it some new and dramatic coloring each time it was told. It was designed to plant in his mind the thought that his affliction was not a liability, but an asset of great value. Despite the fact that all the philosophy I've examined clearly indicated that every adversity brings with it the seed of an equivalent advantage, I must confess that I had not the slightest idea how this affliction could ever become an asset. However, I continued my practice of wrapping that philosophy in bedtime stories, hoping the time would come when he would find some plan by which his handicap could be made to serve some useful purpose. Reason told me plainly that there was no adequate compensation for the lack of ears and natural hearing equipment. Desire backed by faith pushed reason aside and inspired me to carry on. As I analyzed the experience in retrospect, I can see now that my son's faith in me had much to do with the astounding results. He did not question anything I told him. I sold him the idea that he had a distinct advantage over his older brother, and that this advantage would reflect itself in many ways. For example, the teachers in school would observe that he had no ears, and because of this, they would show him special attention and treat him with extraordinary kindness. They always did. His mother saw to that, by visiting the teachers and arranging with them to give the child the extra attention necessary. I sold him the idea, too, that when he became old enough to sell newspapers, his older brother had already become a newspaper merchant, he would have a big advantage over his brother, for the reason that people would pay him extra money for his wares, because they could see that he was a bright, industrious boy, despite the fact he had no ears. We could notice that gradually the child's hearing was improving. Moreover, he had not the slightest tendency to be self-conscious because of his affliction. When he was about 7, he showed the first evidence that our method of servicing his mind was bearing fruit. For several months, he begged for the privilege of selling newspapers, but his mother would not give her consent. She was afraid that his deafness made it unsafe for him to go on the street alone. Finally, he took matters in his own hands. One afternoon, when he was left at home with the servants, he climbed through the kitchen window, shinnied to the ground, and set out on his own. He borrowed 6 cents in capital from a neighborhood shoemaker, invested it in papers, sold out, reinvested, and kept repeating until late in the evening. After balancing his accounts and paying back the 6 cents he had borrowed from his banker, he had a net profit of 42 cents. When we got home that night, we found him in bed asleep, with the money tightly clenched in his hand. His mother opened his hand, removed the coins, and cried. Of all things, crying over her son's first victory seemed so inappropriate. My reaction was the reverse. I laughed heartily, for I knew that my endeavor to plant in the child's mind an attitude of faith in himself had been successful. His mother saw in his first business venture a little deaf boy who had gone out in the streets and risked his life to earn money. I saw a brave, ambitious, self-reliant little businessman whose stock in himself had been increased 100% because he had gone into business on his own initiative and had won. The transaction pleased me because I knew that he had given evidence of a trait of resourcefulness that would go with him all through life Later events proved this to be true. When his older brother wanted something, he would lie down on the floor, kick his feet in the air, cry for it, and get it. When the little deaf boy wanted something, he would plan a way to earn the money, then buy it for himself. He still follows that plan. Truly, my own son has taught me that handicaps can be converted into stepping stones, on which one may climb towards some worthy goal, unless they are accepted as obstacles and used as allies. The little deaf boy went through the grades, high school, and college without being able to hear his teachers, excepting when they shouted loudly at close range. He did not go to a school for the deaf. We would not permit him to learn the sign language. We were determined that he should live a normal life and associate with normal children, and we stood by that decision, although it cost us many heated debates with school officials. While he was in high school, he tried an electrical hearing aid, but it was of no value to him, due, we believed, to a condition that was disclosed when the child was 6 by Dr. J. Gordon Wilson of Chicago, when he operated on one side of the boy's head and discovered that there was no sign of natural hearing equipment. During his last week in college, 18 years after the operation, something happened which marked the most important turning point of his life. Through what seemed to be mere chance, he came into possession of another electrical hearing device, which was sent to him on trial. He was slow about testing it, due to his disappointment with a similar device. Finally, he picked the instrument up and, more or less carelessly, placed it on his head, hooked up the battery, and lo, as if by a stroke of magic, his lifelong desire for normal hearing became a reality. For the first time in his life, he heard practically as well as any person with normal hearing. God moves in mysterious ways, his wonders to perform. Overjoyed because of the changed world which had been brought to him through his hearing device, he rushed to the telephone, called his mother, and heard her voice perfectly. The next day, he plainly heard the voices of his professors in class, for the first time in his life. Previously, he could hear them only when they shouted at short range. He heard the radio. He heard the talking pictures. For the first time in his life, he could converse freely with other people, without the necessity of their having to speak loudly. Truly, he had come into possession of a changed world. We had refused to accept nature's error, and by persistent desire, we had induced nature to correct that error.
Sorry about that. Saw 4.5 minutes. Now I'm seeing 11 minutes on here. So we're gonna wrap it up and go towards the end of it here. I'm just gonna skip through. That is an important story there, but let me just get to it so you guys, because the end is really good. Just want to make sure you hear the last few minutes here. Okay, so we're gonna skip ahead.
Early in her career, Madame Schumann-Heink visited the director of the Vienna Court Opera to have him test her voice, but he did not test it. After
This was about a person who wasn't very attractive, who wanted to be an opera singer. Okay, so this guy said, "You'll never be an opera singer," tells her that, doesn't realize her desire.
At the awkward and poorly dressed girl, he explained none too gently, "With such a face and with no personality at all, how can you ever expect to succeed in opera? My good child, give up the idea. Buy a sewing machine and go to work. You can never be a singer." Never is a long time. The director of the Vienna Court Opera knew much about the technique of singing. He knew little about the power of desire, when it assumes the proportion of an obsession. If he had known more of that power, he would not have made the mistake of condemning genius without giving it an opportunity. Several years ago, one of my business associates became ill. He became worse as time went on, and finally was taken to the hospital for an operation. Just before he was wheeled into the operating room, I took a look at him, and wondered how anyone as thin and emaciated as he could possibly go through a major operation successfully. The doctor warned me that there was little, if any, chance of my ever seeing him alive again. But that was the doctor's opinion. It was not the opinion of the patient. Just before he was wheeled away, he whispered feebly, "Do not be disturbed, Chief. I'll be out of here in a few days." The attending nurse looked at me with pity. But the patient did come through safely. After it was all over, his physician said, nothing but his own desire to live saved him. He never would have pulled through if he had not refused to accept the possibility of death. I believe in the power of desire backed by faith, because I have seen this power lift men from lowly beginnings to places of power and wealth. I have seen it rob the grave of its victims. I have seen it serve as the medium by which men staged a comeback after having been defeated in 100 different ways. I have seen it provide my own son with a normal, happy, successful life, despite nature's having sent him into the world without years. How can one harness and use the power of desire? This has been answered through this and the subsequent chapters of this audiobook. This message is going out to the world at the end of the longest and perhaps the most devastating depression America has ever known. It is reasonable to presume that the message may come to the attention of many who have been wounded by depression, those who have lost their fortunes, others who have lost their positions, and great numbers who must reorganize their plans and stage a comeback. To all these, I wish to convey the thought that all achievement, no matter what may be its nature or its purpose, must begin with an intense, burning desire for something definite. Through some strange and powerful principle of mental chemistry, which he has never divulged, nature wraps up in the impulse of strong desire that something which recognizes no such word as impossible and accepts no such reality as failure.
Made it through it. Good job. Great work here. Just a couple questions, if you guys want to answer or share anything on kind of what you got from there, and then we'll wrap this up. So, we did the statement of desire, and this is Napoleon Hill writes, remember too, that all who succeed in life get off to a bad start, pass through many heartbreaking struggles before they arrive. The turning point in the lives of those who succeed usually comes at the moment of some crisis through which we are introduced to our other selves. What is the turning point in their life? We talked about that. Final thing here. So what is the difference between wishing for a thing and being ready to receive it? Did you guys pick that one up? It was a little bit before the end. What does that mean to be ready to receive it and just wishing for it? How can you be ready?
Ready to take action.
Ready to take action, but you're okay with accepting what it is that you desire, right?
Belief.
It is, it's a belief, it's a faith, but you're ready for it. And then it does start coming. Like you just, it's that knowing, it's that belief, it's the state of mind, okay? And then are you truly ready to receive what you desire? That's a big question, you know, for everybody here, but just any thoughts just on those last stories?
I'll add to that.
Go ahead, Ken.
Many of the people that I've trained and worked with,
Uh-huh.
sometimes people don't want to get business. They don't want to succeed. They have, it's literally crazy. Like you will set up an appointment, you will say, all you can just show up. And they just do not want to go to that next level. They're fighting with themselves. And it's being handed to them.
You don't want to put in the
They
work.
just it's not the work. It's their self-limitation of belief that's entitled to them. It's not the work. If they feel that they're not worthy of it. It's different than the work. It's not laziness. It's just like Brandon was saying, I've been told that this is what I can be. This is all I'm gonna be. And you're giving that person that, and they're going, they can't accept it. So that's part of what he's talking about, and being willing to be ready to accept it. Is that sometimes you will go and you're not ready to accept it. Your self-doubting beliefs are not allowing you to be all the greatness that you have within you. And for whatever reasons that is, I don't know, but I witnessed it personally multiple times. I can't believe it. Like I'm sitting there going, you don't want the appointment. You don't want, they're okay with doing this. And when it comes to the reality of getting that person the money, they won't close the deal. They'll sabotage you, self-sabotage you. It's crazy. And I see it all the time. You have to be ready to receive the wealth. And by doing that, you have to clean yourself of the doubt or whatever hurdles you have. I will tell you, when we do personal coaching, Brandon will attest to this, when we meet with people, you know the answers of why you're not doing what you're doing. And it's like when you self-discover what it is, and you're the one saying it, we're not even telling it. We're not telling you what it is. I've seen people break down and cry when they figure it out. Whatever that was, whatever their limitations were, whatever they stopped doing, it's craziness. But just you have to be ready. And that's, I think, what he meant in that saying.
Mhm. Well, one of the things I liked, and I just asked Steven if there's anything he wanted to share. He talked about earlier, increased crime in lower income areas, lack of money is the root of all evil. So he was adding to that. But one of the things that jumped out at me, actually, I heard it this morning as I was listening to it, was when he talked about bedtime stories. Does anybody do bedtime stories with their kids? Use that as kind of a tool? So my dad did that with us. So every morning he was great at telling stories. And I used to love, like, every night, it was like a treat. It was like getting ice cream or getting something. My dad would tell the story. He was so good. He was animated and get into it. And he'd always teach us a lesson. So we always knew it was all right. So what's the lesson? Like, what'd you learn? I'm like, all right, Dad. Yeah, I got to do this. I got to, whatever it was. But he used that. And that's what I love, that Napoleon Hill realized that his son loves stories. We have, give a little bit, it's not too personal. It's my son still likes trying to sneak in bed, being next to mama and cuddling. He's 8 years old now, right? Still sneaking in bed. He's pushing me. I'm on the edge of the bed and I'm like, come on. Yeah, it's getting crazy. Told you 2 years ago when you're 6. When you turn 7, it's done, right? You're not gonna have a mustache next to mom here. In a couple years from now, we're gonna have a problem. So, but last night, actually, I didn't tell him a story. I just started reading a baseball book. And, I was probably not even, 5-10 minutes in, he's snoring, he's out, right? And I'm into it, so I'm just reading them. Oh, what's coming up next? Like getting into it. But it's, to be honest, on my end, I'm being lazy about it with the opportunity I have with my kid, with my son, to be that comfort he needs, lay next to him in his bed and just read him a story. So we finally got the night light, the little light that goes on to the thing. And we're gonna start working on it. But as he talked about creating these stories, I actually want to think, like, give it some thought, not just try to wing it of the moment. Like, what do I want to teach him? What principle do I want to teach him? All right. To help him overcome these things, to start planting these seeds and knowing that anything's possible. And Ken knows, some of you may know, that my son wants to be a pro baseball player. Doesn't realize his mom's 4'10", but we're not gonna let that limit him, because size doesn't matter, right? And what she does have, even though she's physically 4'10", Krista knows her, she's exactly. She's got a spirit and she's got a force that is insane, like nothing I've ever seen before. And because of how she grew up is why she is the way that she is. And the reason why I know something happens to me tomorrow, my kids are good. You know what I mean? Because I got a beast at home. I got somebody who can run it and take over and always figure it out. So it's knowing that. It's knowing, it's just having those thoughts and seeing what is life, how do we feel sorry for ourselves? Or what do we create with that? But I wanted to share that bedtime story because that's the one that, gets me a little teary.
Out of your
Gets me a little emotional.
You see a lot of athletes that their sons follow too. Why is that? And it's because of that. It's that they see an example and they firmly believe that it can be done. It's not that they're any different than any other kid. It's just that they in their head are being told, you can do this. I've done this. You can do this. And they're growing up with different limited belief systems than other people. Unfortunately, some people that, like in poverty or whatever, that they see and they keep repeating, you'll never do that. You guys do this. You'll always just be that, because that's what we do. And that kind of stuff will be what you believe. But what we're doing here and discussing what we're doing, you're surrounded with people that have done all sorts of great things. And it may not just be selling a lot. It's other abilities, great mom, great this, whatever. Everybody here has their gifts. And in sharing that, we should be able to push ourselves and elevate ourselves to another level.
It's a special thing what we're doing here. I hope you guys are seeing it, kind of feeling it. Just grateful.
I have something to add.
Yeah. Hey, welcome to the party, Stephen. What you got, bud?
Thank you. So when we were reading this chapter and you actually stopped us during it, I wanted to say something. It was a part where it says, if the thing you wish to do is right and you believe in it, go ahead and do it. Put your dream across and never mind what they say if you meet with temporary defeat, for they perhaps do not know that every failure brings with it the seed of an equivalent success. So just to go off of that, basically, late last year, maybe in December, I had called one of my friends. He's the one who got me into real estate, told me to go to Century 21. And he was very optimistic about real estate. And so basically I told him this year, like, because he went to Redfin and he's a associate agent. So he's getting paid for doing showings and stuff. I'm
Right.
like, this year, I'm like, hey, dude, you should come back to, traditional, try to get on with the XP. And I was being very like optimistic um about what I had planned. I wanted to, I want to go door knock 100 doors per day every weekend. So Saturday and Sunday, I wanted to go door knock. And then I'm like, in my head, I'm like, I'm gonna make it happen. I'm gonna succeed this year, and I don't care what anyone says. And then he shares with me like, oh, but you have all this competition, you have all this, XYZ. I'm like, in my mind, I never even thought about the competition.
Right.
But in his mind, he's thinking the negative side, and I'm just like, why? I try to ask him like, why do you care about what the competition does? Like, who
Right.
cares? But yeah, that little quote, that little paragraph right there got me thinking about that moment when I was talking to my friend, and
Yeah.
thinking that he's the one who got me into real estate,
Right.
and then he's now saying that stuff.
Right. Yeah, no, I appreciate you sharing that. And the key, and you're gonna find that through this book also, is there's people you care about that you're very close to, their family, and you have to learn how to still protect your mind in those. You can still love them,
Hmm.
care about them, you still pray for them, you can still you don't have to cut them off or completely, remove yourself from it, but you got to realize certain people put you in a certain state of mind, right? And so
Yeah.
you got to be very aware of it, and for yourself, just to recognize and know, as Ken said, maybe you can't do it, but I can do it, right? Like I can always figure out a way. Certain people spend their time creating excuses. They talk about it, create alibis. Other people figure out a way to do it, whatever it is that they want to do. You can either spend time using your imagination to create plans and ways. This is what we're doing. We're stretching the brain. We're using something that we may not have used since we were little kids. When we used to imagine anything was possible. And you'd figure something out. It's like, all right, how am I going to get that ice cream today? Right? You figure out a way to get it. Whether you snuck it or whether you convinced your parents by some good act that you did, like my son was trying to do last night. But Dad, I won the championship. I won the championship last night. You promised me that I'd get an ice cream sandwich if I won the championship. I said, you're right, but you already brushed your teeth, right? I said, yeah. So it said, okay, well, tomorrow you'll get your he's oh, well, then can I sleep in bed with you and mom since I won the champ? He's just still working. But I love even though I shut him down, right?
Desire.
He's got the desire. He does.
Um,
It's nothing more important to him than that. You know what I mean? He's straight
win?
100% mine. Yeah, they won the whole thing.
No, I'm saying
Did he
Come on,
win?
you got-
I read him a story in bed and he passed out. And it was soothing to me that I got to soothe him. You know what I'm saying? By just hearing my boring voice puts his ass to sleep. You know? But,
Stephen, I want to ask you something. Can you hear me, Stephen?
Steven.
Yes, I can.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
How many people do you think consistently door knock? Out of all the really
Probably like
percentage?
nobody. Maybe like 10%, if that.
It's
Less
probably
than one.
1%.
Two? I'd say less than
And
one.
I mean, if I look at maybe 0.5%.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, like, even at Century 21, we look at our old company when it was pumping. Maybe Judy,
Yeah.
and she's doing really, really well because she successfully does it methodically does it. She has her mail outs, her door knocking methodically. It's a system, it's a plan. But the point why I bring that up is your friend who said the competition. There is no competition. First of all, we're in California. You can do business anywhere you want. There's this block, that block, that block. Those are all limitations that person's putting, and that's why they're a partner agent. Is because they've given up. And there is no competition. You're your competition.
Yep.
You're your competition.
Yeah.
That's it. End of the discussion.
Yeah, it's the same thing I tell the kids in sports, baseball, softball. I know you've heard me say it. Doesn't matter who you're playing on the other side. You're playing yourself. Doesn't matter who you're up against. Doesn't matter how good they are, what their record is, what their size is. None of it. They're human beings. They're kids, just like your kids. And if you're playing yourself, your only competition's yourself. But you got to believe that. You got to know that. And then when they stop focusing on that and they just focus on what they can do, the magic happens. The great things happen. It's the same thing with us with agents. So again, don't spend your time with the alibis. Spend your time coming up with solutions and taking action. You know what I mean?
Oh,
Go
sorry.
ahead. No, you're good.
I just wanted to say, this is my favorite chapter. You know, I don't know if all of you know, but I had a cancer diagnosis and they said it was stage 4. And so at the time I had a 3-year-old, a 15-year-old and a 17-year-old. And I would not accept it. I went to like the head doctor at UCLA. He said, don't do chemo anymore. Don't do radiation. Don't do surgery. You're just going to have to stay on these like target therapies. And, you know, it's basically a marathon at this point. And I was 38 and I just, you know, I just didn't accept it. So I was like, no, I can't. This can't happen. You know, my kid's not even going to know me. So, you know, as far as like believing it, I believe that no, this isn't going to happen. This isn't my, you know, I won't accept it. And then I searched out different oncologists and different surgeons. So like, you know, putting that, your belief, you have to put the work. Because even if I just kept saying, no, it's not going to happen. No, this isn't my reality. If I would have just stayed on that same trajectory and stayed with that doctor, you know, that would have been my reality. But, you know, and then just gathering yourself with other people who believe that you can do it too, I feel like is a huge thing too. I found that, you know, a doctor was like, no, we're not going to accept that. You're too young. You know, we're going to take your case to the tumor board. And like, you know, they were advocating for me and I was like, oh, okay, good. So long story short, I'm NED for 8 years now. And, you know, it is a belief and it is, you know, and that was my bump in the road, you know, because that changed my life, that changed my family's life. You know, our outlook is so much bigger now. My faith is so much bigger, you know, and I still talk to some of my friends from like my support group and stuff. And a lot of the ladies didn't make it. And, you know, when we were in support group, they were like, why remodel my backyard? You know, I'm not going to be there to see it. And I was just like, oh, man, like, dang, you know, and God bless her, she didn't make it. And now I don't, you know, I don't know what, or I don't know what I didn't read her, you know, her notes or anything, but you know, it is a mindset and everything in life is a mindset. You know, I could have looked at that and been like, oh, I'm just gonna, you know, I don't know, because that's not me. But you do have to gather yourself around people too, who are like, no, that's not it. You're not gonna die, you know, or yeah, we're gonna go do this and get, you know, like prospects and let's sit down and do it together, you know. So it's real, you know, it really is. It's a mindset, it's how you look at things, bad things that happen, you know, it's a blessing and a curse.
You know, thank you for sharing that. It's awesome. I mean, it's a great story and inspiring. And I can't even imagine what you had to go through.
Yeah.
And it paled everything that I look at, my problems, I'm going,
It's nothing.
it's nothing
Right.
compared to what you went through. You know, and so I mean, it seems that little story could put things in perspective for all of us. So thank you for sharing that. But I'll tell you, the human spirit, and Bob Proctor talks about it, it's talked about in this clip, the human spirit is unstoppable. You could do whatever you want. It's meant for that. It's meant to continually grow. That's what it is. Spirit is meant to grow. My brother-in-law, he's 83. He's losing, he's has COPD. His vision is messed up where he can't drive, but he wants to go buy an RV because he wants to still travel. And I'm thinking to myself, dude, you got like 5 years left, you know, in my head, you know, but his spirit, no, what are you talking about? I got things to see.
Yeah.
I want an RV. And he wants to have that campfire. He wants to have that with the thing. The human spirit doesn't quit. It's amazing what we can do, what we want, it's meant to unleash power. It's meant to grow. Things stifle that, but you are given a gift, and that's the human spirit. And it talks about it in every book and everything that's along this, what we're talking about. It's your spirit kept you going,
Totally.
and that was awesome.
Two little things to piggyback on you guys. So I am a faith-based person. I would not be living if I was not, literally has saved my life. But something just to piggyback on what you guys are saying, like in James, it says faith that works is dead. So you can have all the faith in the world, but if you don't believe it, you don't act upon it, you don't actively do the healing process, the meditation or what have you, it's null. So you have to put the two and two together in order for it to come into fruition. And then the other part of that is the power of life and death is in your tongue, what we say, and also what we hear.
Right.
So it's also important that we can breathe life into not just our physical being, but our mentality, our dreams, our aspirations, the health of our family, the health of this community. Everything comes from what we speak and what we put into existence. And it could be used for good, or it could be used to tear down, discourage instead of encourage. So just two things to kind of do, want to look at that on your own, but two things that I uphold in my life too.
That's great. No, I was thinking of, actually, as you were talking, Stephen, if you're still here, the book called Four Agreements. Have you guys read that or heard of that? Four Agreements. So it's talking about your words and the power of your words. And you could either spread poison, which are negative things that kind of bring people down, similar to the friend, whether he meant well or not, saying, "Oh, you thought about the competition? Like, what are you doing there?" Yet he chooses a different career path, a little bit more safer path, where you get paid an hourly, to work for a company like Redfin. Not to knock it, right? But it's a choice for what your life is and what your needs are and what you need to do. What were you gonna say, Jeff?
Just one more thing I wanted to add
Yeah.
to just following you now. I had one of my best friends when I was 4 years old went through a very similar situation. As you, it makes me emotional because it was so hard to watch it. So thinking that you went through that too is just, it's hard to think that, that, she's very, very religious as well, and has her strong beliefs. And one of the things that she told me during the process when she went from just beautiful, full figured 36-year-old with 2 babies to this just complete rail with nothing left, no hair, had a mastectomy, just everything. And I remember her just telling me that the Bible, the verse that she would focus on was, whatever you focus on expands. And so I always remember that. I think of her, and her focus was on healing, just like yours. She just focused on healing. And it was like, she just always told me, whatever you focus on expands. And I'm like, it's true with this business. If you're focusing on positivity and camaraderie and success and just all of these good things, it expands.
Yeah, and sometimes too, it's crazy. We have it in relationships, work, personal, whatever. How many times have you gotten in an argument with your significant other or someone? And all it would have taken was an apology. But your ego, you're festering, prolonging it. And at the bottom line is everybody's just miserable. And the human language said one thing that hurt someone's feelings. And you're like, well, I'm not gonna apologize. I don't want, but and I see this with like kids with their parents, or you see it in my own marriage. I've said things and I'm like, my ego, whatever. And you go, life is short. And all it would have taken was, hey, you know what? Sorry. And then you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like but the tongue, like she's saying, can spread poison. The ego can really hold that, can keep that festering. And it's like it's best to realize that, what are you doing?
Right.
What are you doing here? What's the point of this? Is it helping you? No, you're making 2 people miserable. Life is short. God forbid something was to happen like that. And I know this is not work related, but I'm just saying, this is the kind of stuff that you will see. That the power of the tongue. And it's like, and if you don't have anything good to say, don't say it at all. And that's the bottom line. It doesn't, there is no good outcome. There is no good outcome. All of us are different, and we have to be more accepting of people. And that's gonna lead to a better relationship in our business.
Absolutely. Gobi, you always have so much to say. Anything you want to share with the group, just from you, this is your first time here, right?
Yeah.
What do you think so far?
Actually, I didn't expect that.
No?
Yeah, but I am happy that I am here today.
We're happy. Of
Of
course. Anything you want to share with the group? Other than being happy?
Actually, I'm reading a book which called high performing what? I don't remember it. Oh, high performing habits.
High performing habits.
They really help a lot recently
Yeah.
to keep me feel like positive toward my working life.
That's great. Well, thank you for
I would
sharing.
like to share it.
Yeah. No, it's good.
So, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
You grew up in what, a Buddhist? You don't, religious wise, is,
I don't have any.
you don't have religion,
But I believe all of the gods in the universal.
okay.
And
So
he
is this
calls it,
conversation, what we're talking about, is it uncomfortable or does it make sense?
It's healthy for me.
Yeah. Is there anything that you want to input based on what we're saying that maybe you grew up differently? Like that, have
We
we,
grew up in different culture with all the people here, but the same fact. Yeah,
Usually the voucher.
no, it was interesting because when I was in college,
You tell me.
I had a Chinese intern was there that we would go to the field trips to the Getty Museum, and she was like, what is AD and B, what does AD mean? She didn't even know, and I'm like, oh, and then I started thinking, we started talking, and I said, well, it's crazy because a lot of my good and bad is based on guilt. And you didn't have that, so how do you determine good and bad? Like, how do you, so it's interesting, that's why I'm asking the question, is like, when you were brought up, what were the words of encouragement your parents gave you? What was there without religion? Like, what was that? Is there any difference?
I think you just mentioned about what is good or not so good, right?
Right.
But for me, I think that is your personal value. Yeah, and that's why your family give it to you. They just show you. Yeah, their behavior will affect you, impact you your whole life.
That's awesome. Did your
I always feel like supported.
parents supported you?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that, do you think that led to your success in coming out here and everything?
Am I successful right now? I don't think so, but it's like my fast to keep me go forward.
Keeps you going forward?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like a brand did that to your son, because your son says he wants to play the basketball, right?
Yeah.
He wants the champion.
Uh-huh.
You will just encouraging him all the time, and you will believe he will
Right.
achieve his goal one day.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's what my parents did for me.
That's great. Oh, that's
I'm
great.
so embarrassed.
Don't be. Thank you for sharing that. That was very sweet. And it's the same thing that, see, I'm the softest with all this stuff. No, but I think of my son. No, I think of my son, but he says the line in there is his son knew that the dad believed that he'd be able to hear, right? Even with growing up with no ears, he believed it. And so he didn't question that. So whatever his dad told him, he believed. So you can create, just like when they showed that scene with Thomas
I was
Edison,
just gonna
with
say
what that note was,
impactful.
what his mom told him was his belief, right? So very, very important. Adrian, please take it. No, you always got a lot of really good wisdom. Please just, yeah, whatever you want to share.
No, and it's just happy to be here and, a lot of the things like with the disabled, that's in the Bible too, God's promise to heal the disabled. So it is that mindset of what you choose with that, and if you choose to believe it or not, and accepting the doctor's reality, he's just another child of God, and so you have to recognize which force is greater. And yeah, the Bible talks about the hardest thing to tame is the tongue, and that is the hardest thing to master. For some, it's easier, but for others, you learn along the way. Hey, that didn't. I mean, I've done that. You talk to someone, and then you think about it 3 seconds later, like that did not come out right.
That's human nature.
That's every day of my life.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So you just, you keep learning, you keep growing.
that's great. Thank you for
All
sharing
right,
that.
Brandon, thank you for putting this together, man.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
No, let's wrap it up. Thank you, guys. Appreciate your time. Steven, thank you for hopping on. Another self-help growth book called Psycho Cybernetics by Dr. Maxwell Maltz. It's also really great. All right, brother. We're gonna wrap this up. You have a good one.